The night he finally watched the footage, his hands would not stop shaking. On the screen, his little girl sat alone at a cafeteria table, staring at an empty tray while other children laughed around her. She folded her arms tight across her stomach, like she was trying to hold herself together. And then she did something that broke him. Before we go any further, if stories like this move you, if you believe every voice deserves to be heard, take a moment to subscribe to the Black Voices. Like this video and share your thoughts in the comments. Your support helps these real human stories reach the people who need them most. Every afternoon, just after 3:30, the front door would open with the same soft creak. Marcus learned to recognize the sound of his daughter's steps. Before he even saw her, slow, dragging. 2. Quiet for a 10-year-old. Aaliyah used to burst through that door like a gust of wind. She'd toss her backpack onto the couch, talk about spelling tests and playground drama, and ask what was for dinner before she even took off her shoes. But lately, she slipped inside like she was trying not to be noticed. Her shoulders hunched, her braids slightly undone, eyes tired in a way that didn't belong on a child's face. The first time he noticed the change, he blamed it on a growth spurt. Kids get tired, he told himself. School can be overwhelming. But then he started seeing the way she went straight to the kitchen. Not for a snack she liked. Not for fruit or yogurt. She would open the refrigerator and just stand there, staring. Then she'd grab whatever was quickest. Cold leftovers. Dry bread. Sometimes she wouldn't even warm it up. She'd eat fast, too fast, like someone who hadn't eaten all day. One evening, he asked gently, trying to keep his tone light, "They feedin' y'all enough at school?" She shrugged without looking at him. Said she wasn't that hungry at lunchtime. Said sometimes she just didn't like what they served. Marcus nodded. Schools didn't always get it right, but something in her voice felt rehearsed. Careful. He worked long hours as a city bus mechanic in Cleveland, grease under his nails. Back sore by the end of the shift. He wasn't rich, but he made sure his daughter never went without. Since her mother passed away 3 years earlier, it had been just the two of them. A small brick house, a steady routine. Friday night movies on the couch with popcorn. Sunday mornings at church with her in a bright dress holding his hand. He had promised himself he would protect her from anything he could. The second week he noticed, she started waking up in the middle of the night. He would hear her moving in the kitchen. At first he thought she was just thirsty. But when he walked out quietly, he found her sitting at the table in the dark, chewing slowly on a peanut butter sandwich. The only light came from the stove clock. Green numbers glowing on her face. She jumped when she saw him. Tried to smile. Said she just couldn't sleep. He sat across from her. The silence between them felt heavier than usual. He wanted to press harder, but he also didn't want to push her into shutting down completely. The next day, he packed her lunch himself. Turkey sandwich, apple slices, granola bar, juice box. He slipped in a small note that said, "You are stronger than you know. Love, Dad." When she came home, the lunchbox was still zipped. He waited until she went to shower before opening it, everything untouched. That night, something inside him shifted from worry to fear. The following morning, he called the school. The front office secretary assured him Aaliyah had been present every day. No issues reported, no complaints from teachers. She was quiet but polite. Did her work. No signs of trouble. He thanked them, but the reassurance didn't settle him. If she wasn't eating the lunch he packed, and she wasn't eating the school lunch, then what was happening between 8 in the morning and 3 in the afternoon? He considered going to the principal, but he didn't want to embarrass his daughter if it was something small. Kids can be sensitive. He didn't want to make things worse. Then one afternoon he noticed something else. Aaliyah had lost weight. It wasn't dramatic at first, just a little sharper around her cheeks, her clothes hanging slightly looser. But when she stood beside him while he washed dishes, he could see her collarbones more clearly than before. He asked her teacher for a meeting. In the classroom, surrounded by colorful posters and construction paper projects, her teacher said Aaliyah had been more withdrawn lately. She didn't raise her hand as much. She avoided group activities. But academically, she was fine. No disciplinary issues. No obvious bullying reported. Marcus asked if she was eating lunch. The teacher hesitated. Said she wasn't sure. She monitored the class, but she couldn't watch every child the entire period. He walked out of that meeting feeling helpless. That night after Aaliyah went to bed, he sat at the kitchen table staring at his phone. He hated the idea forming in his mind. It felt like a betrayal. but he needed to know the truth. The next morning, he placed a small camera inside her lunchbox. It was one he had bought months ago, to monitor the front porch after a package was stolen. It was discreet, hardly noticeable unless you were looking for it. He told himself this wasn't about spying. It was about protecting his child. All day at work, he couldn't focus. The sound of metal clanging in the garage echoed louder than usual. Every hour felt like 3. When he got home, he didn't greet her with his usual smile. He hugged her a little tighter. She smelled like chalk and school hallways. After dinner, when she went to her room to do homework, he sat down with his laptop. His heart pounded as he loaded the footage. The cafeteria appeared on screen. Long gray tables, bright fluorescent lights, kids moving in lines, noise even without sound. He watched as Aliyah walked in holding her lunchbox. She stood in line. Not for hot food, just standing, waiting. When she reached the cashier, the woman behind the register spoke to her. Even without audio, Marcus could see the exchange. Aliyah shook her head. The cashier pointed toward the end of the line. Aliyah stepped aside. Then he saw it. A group of girls at a nearby table started whispering. One of them laughed. Another nudged her friend and looked directly at Aliyah. His daughter hesitated before walking to an empty table in the corner. She opened her lunchbox slowly. Then she closed it. A boy walked past and said something. He smirked. Aliyah lowered her head. For the next 20 minutes, she just sat there, hands folded in her lap, staring at the tabletop while everyone else ate. When the bell rang, she stood up and threw away nothing. Marcus replayed the footage 3 times. He wanted to believe he misunderstood, that maybe she had eaten before the camera caught it. But no, it was clear. She wasn't eating because she was being isolated. The next day's footage showed more. When she did try to sit near other kids, they scooted their trays away. One girl dramatically covered her nose. Another whispered something that made the table laugh. Marcus felt a heat rise in his chest he hadn't felt in years. Not since he was a teenager himself. Walking home from school, trying to ignore the taunts thrown. His way in a neighborhood that didn't always feel welcoming. But this was his daughter. His baby. That evening, he didn't mention the camera. He sat beside her on the couch and asked softly if anyone had been mean to her. She shrugged again. That same small practiced movement. He told her he loved her more than anything. That nothing she said could ever disappoint him. That he just wanted to understand. Her eyes filled before she could stop them. She whispered that some kids said her food smelled weird. That they said her hair was too big. That when she tried to sit down, they would say the seats were saved. That one girl told her she didn't belong at their table. She said she didn't want to cause trouble. Didn't want to be the reason anyone got in trouble. So she stopped trying, and she stopped eating. Marcus pulled her into his chest and held her while she cried. He felt her small body shake, and he realized how much she had been carrying alone. The next morning, he requested a meeting with the principal. He brought printed screenshots from the footage, not to accuse, but to show what his daughter had been enduring. The principal listened carefully. Her expression changed as she flipped through the images. She assured him the school had a zero-tolerance policy for bullying. She promised immediate action. Within days, changes were made. Teachers increased supervision during lunch. The students involved were spoken to. Parents were contacted. But Marcus knew policies weren't enough. That weekend, he asked Aliyah if she would help him cook. They prepared her favorite meal together. Seasoned chicken, collard greens, cornbread. The kitchen filled with warmth and laughter for the first time in weeks. He told her that her food wasn't something to hide. It was part of who she was, part of their family, part of their history. The following Monday, instead of sending her alone, he took the day off work and asked the school if he could visit during lunch as part of a family cultural appreciation idea he had pitched to the principal. He stood in that cafeteria with trays of homemade dishes. He spoke calmly about family recipes, about traditions passed down through generations, about how food tells stories. Some kids looked unsure at first. Then one brave student tried a bite. Then another. Within minutes, the same cafeteria that had once echoed with whispers filled with curiosity instead. Aliyah sat beside him watching. A girl who had once laughed at her hesitated before stepping forward. She tried a piece of cornbread. Her expression softened. It wasn't an instant miracle. Kids don't transform overnight. But something shifted. Over the next weeks, Aaliyah began eating her lunch again, slowly at first, then with more confidence. She started sitting with a small group of girls who shared books and jokes about teachers. She even invited one of them over for a weekend study session. The weight returned to her cheeks. The light returned to her eyes. One evening, as they cleaned up dinner, she looked up at him and said she felt brave again. Marcus realized something powerful that night. The camera had exposed a secret, but it wasn't just about cruelty. It revealed silence, the quiet way a child can suffer without wanting to burden anyone, the way hunger can be more than just physical. He removed the camera from the lunchbox. Trust had been rebuilt, not through spying, but through listening, through showing up. Months later, Aaliyah stood in front of her class during a cultural heritage presentation. She spoke about her family's traditions, about resilience, about how sometimes people don't understand what's different from them. Her voice didn't shake. Marcus watched from the back of the room, pride swelling in his chest. He understood that protecting his daughter didn't mean shielding her from every hurt. It meant walking beside her through it, teaching her that her voice mattered, that her identity wasn't something to shrink. And in that small cafeteria in Cleveland, something bigger than a lunch period had changed. Children learned that what they mocked, they simply didn't know. Parents became more involved. Teachers paid closer attention. Aaliyah came home one afternoon with that old familiar energy. She dropped her backpack, ran into the kitchen, and announced she was hungry in the loudest, happiest way. Marcus laughed, the sound deep and relieved. He realized that hunger had been the symptom. Belonging was the real need. And when belonging was restored, everything else followed. If this story touches something in you, remember this. Sometimes the signs are quiet. A zipped lunchbox, a child who says they're fine, a little weight lost, a little silence gained. Pay attention. Ask twice. Listen without judgment. Because when we choose empathy over assumption, when we step into uncomfortable conversations instead of avoiding them, we give our children something stronger than protection. We give them courage. Thank you for being here with the Black Voices, where stories like this remind us that resilience grows in the presence of love, and that even in the hardest moments, connection can bring us back to ourselves. Share your thoughts below. Your voice matters too.